Don't rant, don't rant, don't rant. Strap yourselves in for this one, folks. Hello and welcome to the channel where I'm going to review the Imperial Agents book, which is now out for pre-order from today. Thank you to Games Workshop for sending it through to me. So YouTubers such as me can get an impression and send it out to you. Thanks to Games Workshop, though I'm not sure they're going to be very happy with what I've got to say about this one. This is going to be a review video with my thoughts and impressions about what I found inside, not a detailed breakdown of everything that's inside the codex. There'll be other YouTubers out there that do it much better than me, like Allspec Tactics. So if you want to know in exact detail what's exactly in the book, then go and check out some of the other content creators. Here, this is just my impressions. I understand that some people out there might disagree rather strongly with my opinions and my impressions, so please put your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you think from what you've read and heard about the Imperial Agents book. But I myself, I was really looking forward to this one. Finally, Games Workshop has released a codex which you can use to add to your Imperial armies in an official kind of way. A filthy casuals playground. Can you imagine the modelling opportunities, collection opportunities, the things you could possibly do? Personally, I was really looking forward to breaking out the Grey Knights and allying them with the 13th or with my Mechanicum and having two sort of things going on at the same time. The collection possibilities through the roof. I also know that they've done this before. So if you don't know, if you've got an Imperial Knight, you can add an Imperial Knight to any Imperial force. If you've got a Chaos army, you can add a Chaos Knight to any Chaos force. And when you add a Knight from another thing into a thing, you don't get any of the detachment abilities, you just use the data sheets. You can also do that if you play any Chaos army. If you play Thousand Suns, World Eaters, whatever you play Chaos, you can add 25% of anything you like from the Chaos Demons Codex into your Chaos force. It's lovely, it's open, it allows people to collect what they want and play the game their way. I think they should also do something like that for Eldar. Say we had the Drukhari book and the Craftworld Eldar book. Then we could have a third Eldar book like Eldar Others. And in the Eldar Others book, that's where they can stick the Harlequins, Ynnari, Eldar Corsairs, Eldar Exodites. They could stick them in a third Eldar book and have rules for allying them this way or allying them that way, as well as data sheets and attachments where you could run them individually. I think they should do that for Eldar as well. And that's essentially what is in this book. There's detachments for running this book on its own, and there's rules for running stuff from this book into your other Imperial forces. This is also where you'll find the rules for running your Death Watch. If you out there run Death Watch, we'll get to that. We'll start off with the big thing. As an Allies book, what does it do? How do you attach stuff? You attach like that. That's the same thing that was in the index. If you've got anything, you can add at 2,000 points, you can add 2 retinue units, 2 character units to any Imperial force that you have. You could do that with the index stuff as well. It's the ways you bring assassins, because assassins are in here. It's the way that you bring assassins into any Imperial army. If you want to bring a couple of Vindicators, then you get the book, 2 character units, chuck them in your Space Marines, jobs are good, and 2 retinue units as well. But they've also introduced something called Requisition units. But if you want to add a couple of Inquisitors and a couple of retinue units to your 2,000 point force, then that could be an assassin or one of the many Inquisitors that's in this book, of which there's 4. There's a couple of other different HQs. And then Requisition units are an Imperial Agents team of 10 people for your Inquisitor. You can add Imperial Navy breachers. You can add a rogue trader entourage as a Requisition units, or Voidsmen at Arms to Requisition units, or one of 3 different types of Adeptus Arbites units. They're requisitioned as well. Adeptus Arbites, they're the popo, they're the police of the inside the hive cities. They're subjugator squads and vigilant squads with shotguns running around. Look very, very, very Judge Dreddy. So you can add an Inquisitor, some RBTs, some Rogue Traders, some Voidsmen, 2 of those characters, 2 of those units, chuck them in any Imperial force. Again, if you do this, you don't get access to any of the detachments, you just use the data sheets. Then at 2,000 points, you can add one requisitioned unit to any Imperial force that you have. One of the requisition units is, and they're in this book, they're 2 units, they have the requisition keyword, and one is a unit of 5 Grey Knight Terminators, and the other one is a Sisters of Battle squad. So there goes my idea of running a chunk of Grey Knights with the 13th. I can put one 5-man Terminator squad in with the 13th, and an Assassin and an Inquisitor if I want. But that's as far as the overlap goes. I was hoping that there was a way that you could add some more stuff, but no. And if you've got Sisters and Space Marines and you were thinking running a couple of units of Sisters with a couple of units of Space Marines, no. It's one Sisters unit or one 5-man squad of Terminators who you're going to give a banner and an Arthesium to, but that's it. Those are the 2 new things that you can add since the index card came out. As I said, back with all the indexes, and now you can still add normal retinue units, those Voidsmen, the Breachers, the thing, you can add them, and some Inquisitor, and an Inquisitor, and so you can add the old stuff that you could add still. But not as much variety as, say, Chaos Demons, where you can add 25% of anything into a Chaos force. You could add an Inquisitor to your Imperial Guard if you want, and say, hey, my Imperial Guard are led by an Inquisitor. You could add an Inquisitor to your Space Marine chapter if you want, and say, hey, they're led by an Inquisitor. But the mix and match options are very narrow, and that's what you can do. So I'm not going to be running a chunk of Grey Knights with the 13th, because you can't run a chunk of Grey Knights. It's one unit. There aren't any options as well for going larger than a 5-man Terminator squad. It's not like you can bring 5-man and 10-man for Terminator squad at some point. No, it's just 5 Terminators. That's it. No ranting. No ranting. You can add stuff to your forces, just not a lot. And it's very prescriptive. That's good if you want to do that sort of thing. What about Death Watch players then? Because your codex is now in here. What about Death Watch players? Well, there is a detachment for Death Watch players, and if you bring the Death Watch, then you get 1 of 3 things per command phase. You know, like the Assault, Devastator, Tactical Doctrine that Space Marines get. That's what the Death Watch get as well. So Death Watch units, at the start of their command phase, select 1 mission tactic until the start of your next command phase. That mission tactic applies. Each mission tactic can only be selected once per battle. So for 3 phases, you've got a mission tactic kicking off. And the mission tactic allows you to have either sustained hits for your Death Watch only units, or lethal hits, or precision hits. So that's what Death Watch do now. And then there's 2 shield captains, 2 watch captains, Artemis and a normal watchmaster. And there's the Death Watch kill team and the Corvus Black Star, and that's the Death Watch units. I was looking and looking for another rule that says, and you can bring units from the Space Marine Codex and add them to this detachment as well, but that rule isn't here. You know, like if you play Space Wolves or Dark Angels or Blood Angels or any of them, or Black Templars, that it isn't a whole book, their codex. You've got that particular book and the Space Marine Codex, and you can marry the 2 together to bring that whole range. So essentially, if you're a Dark Angels player or a Black Templar player, you have access to all the detachments in the main Space Marine Codex, and access to a couple of extra detachments in your sub-codex as well. Space Marine players have access to, say, 6 or 7 detachments, but if you're a Blood Angel player, Dark Angels player, you've got access to like 10. You've got access to a lot more, and a lot more models. And the 2 codexes essentially count as 1, but that doesn't exist for Death Watch players anymore. Death Watch players haven't got that overlap anymore. They've got Corvus Black Stars and a kill team and a watchmaster, and that's it. So their army could consist of 2 Corvus Black Stars and 6 Death Watch kill teams, because they're the battle line keyword, and a couple of and then that's it. And how does that army kill stuff? How are you going to actually say you go? There's 1 las cannon there, and that's on the Corvus Black Star. And if you brought other units from this book to add to your Death Watch kill team, which are Death Watch kill, you've got your Death Watch running around all over the place, and then you chuck in a couple more Inquisitors as well and retinue units to help bunker out. If you take all the things, the benefits for the detachment are only going to count for your Death Watch stuff. And why would you add on a bunch of retinues and stuff for your Death Watch stuff when they don't get the benefit for the detachment? And also, where's the las cannons at? Where's the anti-tank at? If you run just Death Watch on its own, how are you going to kill Chaos Knights? How are you going to take down big demons? How are you going to deal with a bunch of Catans? How are you going to deal with lots of Lehman Russ battle tanks and artillery in the backfield when you've got one las cannon that's on your Corvus Blackstar and it's twin linked? It means you're going to be running across on foot and relying on sustained hits or lethal hits and bunching stuff and sixes and things like that from all your inventory. It's how do you, when you've only got access to one anti-tank ranged weapon, it's not really an army, it's not really a fighting force. And all they really needed to do is, in the Ordo, Xenos, Alien Hunters down here, you know, like in other detachments, it says Outriders can be taken as battle line units. There's been exceptions to the rule in other detachments. At the bottom, they could have put a sentence such as, you may take any unit not named characters from the Space Marine Codex as well and attach it to. They could have put that in there. It's not in there, because we don't want money as Calgar turning up and things like that in your Death Watch. No named, just stuff from the Space Marine Codex fixes that issue. And that's not the biggest issue for Death Watch players, because I know a few Death Watch players. Sultan Plays is a Death Watch player, Great Knight SEO is a Death Watch player, and part of the reason why they started collecting and assembling and playing with Death Watch is because they like Space Marines, and Death Watch did something different to all other Space Marine stuff. They allowed you to mix and match different models together that you wouldn't normally be allowed to mix and match. You could put bikers in with guys on foot. You can put Terminators and jumpy dudes in a team together with guys on foot. Fortis kill teams and the other kill teams that you could blend together to give you a very unique look on the battlefield and very unique abilities. And that uniqueness, that blend that's drawn together all the Death Watch players that I personally know has just gone. In fact, the people I know with Death Watch armies, I don't think their armies are viable at all anymore. It was a thing that made Death Watch unique, and it's gone. Don't rant, don't rant, don't rant, don't rant. Okay, so even if they wanted to get rid of that, their uniqueness, even if they wanted to get rid of that, and they've got rid of that, they could have still put a thing in the detachment thing saying that they could take things from the Space Marine book and add them to your Death Watch thing, because right now the Death Watch have got essentially 2 data sheets and some watch captains, and that's not an army at all. They're gonna die, they're gonna lose. I suppose, positive, don't rant, don't rant. I suppose what you could do is field your detachments as normal Space Marine detachments, because while there's a Salamander-ish detachment and a Raven Guard-ish detachment and an Imperial Fist-ish detachment in the Space Marine book, they're not specifically for those chapters. They've been inspired by those chapters, but you can run those detachments. You Space Marine players know what I'm talking about. You can run, it doesn't matter what colour your Space Marines are anymore, you can run them in any one of those detachments. And I guess if you've got Death Watch now, you just need the Space Marine Codex and run them that way. Or you can bring 2 retinue units, you can bring 2 Death Watch kill teams from this book to get your heavy thunder hammers and stuff, and then just stick them in a normal Space Marine list. And then Death Watch kill teams, they still re-roll hit rolls of 1, that's what they do. And if the target that attack does not have the Imperium or Chaos keywords, you re-roll all the hit rolls all the time against Xenos, essentially. That's what they did, that's what they do now. And you could slot them into your Space Marine thing and then use the Ironstorm Spearhead or the Fire Thingy Bobs. You could do that instead. But you can only bring 2 Death Watch kill teams or 2 Corvus Black Stars, or 1 Death Watch kill team and 1 Corvus Black Star in total, because they're both retinue units. And you can bring a maximum of 2 at 2,000 points. 1 of each, 1 in a Black Star flying on, and then paint the rest of your Space Marines like Inquisitions. That's Deathwatch now. Because like I said, if you try and run them as a standalone detachment, you've only got one las cannon, only one anti-tank, anti-monster at range, and you're going to lose 9 out of 10 of your fights. I genuinely think it's such an oversight that it's not been written on the detachment for Ordo Xenos Alien Hunters. I genuinely believe it's such an oversight that within a couple of weeks, or by the time we get the next balanced data slate roll round, I genuinely believe that they're going to stick it in the balanced data slate. Oh, by the way, Deathwatch players, you can add anything that you want from the Space Marine Codex as long as it's not a named character. I expect to see that coming. Surely that's coming, because the flavour of Deathwatch is completely gone. Their combined kill teams gone. And as a standalone faction, just using the stuff from this book, it's not going to work. But why have they done this? Deathwatch, I don't understand why. Deathwatch used to be a unique and special way of playing Space Marines that no other Space Marine forces could emulate. They were the Xenos Hunters. They were the pinnacle. They could combine in all these teams. Why have they taken these modelling options, these collection options away from gamers? I don't understand. Giving more people more options to play with more of their toys? Surely that's the goal. I even went on the record in one of my live stream once saying, don't worry, Deathwatch players, you'll be fine. There'll be a new detachment in here that you can play in a new and unique way. And I'm sure you'll be able to bring everything from the Space Marine Codex as well, except for the named characters, and add them in there and mingle, and it'll be glorious. You'll have a new detachment for yourselves, and they've got a new detachment for themselves, but with one kill team unit running around all over the place. It's just, and the Corvus. And who brings aeroplanes anyway? Aircraft are dead. Don't rant. Okay, so the other way of playing this book is by using this book as it stands and bringing an Inquisitor and bringing the units along that you find in this book as one whole army in and on it itself. There is nothing in here stopping you bringing in an Inquisitor, a couple of Assassins, a couple of 5-man Grey Knight teams, a Deathwatch kill team, and some sisters running around all over the place, and then some Navy dudes or some RBTs. You can use this as a standalone codex and have some kind of horror show on the table of these mix and match units that have no narrative right of all playing together in one pile. Sure, there's loads of narrative reasons why a chunk of this and a chunk of this should fight together, and even a chunk of this with a smattering of this and this as well. There's narrative reasons for that, but no real narrative reasons why you have sisters, RBTs, Navy, Grey Knights, Inquisitor, all together on the... But you could do that if you want to with this book. Say you pulled the best things out of this book and tried to slam it together as some kind of greasy omelette to play it as a standalone faction. What's going to happen? Well, what is going to happen is these are going to come bottom of the tournament pile in their meta watch rankings all the time. Why are they going to come bottom of the pile? Because there's only one las cannon in the entire book. Where's the anti-tank, anti-monster? There is a multi-melter that you can bring on an immolator, and there is a multi-melter you can put on a gun servitor in there. You can swap out the heavy bolter for a multi-melter on a servitor, but that hardly counts. Basically, there's 2 or 3 ranged anti-tank, anti-monster weaponry in the whole codex, which means it's not really an army. It's not really a standalone force in and on it itself, because if you go up against ranged monsters and vehicles, they're gonna blow you off the table. The best that you could do if you bring this as a standalone faction is hoard up really strongly with Inquisitor retinue warband things, and with some Navymen running around, and with some RBTs running, and hoard across the table and try and move block as best you can and try and score as many as your secondaries as you can that way. But at 2,000 points with no real anti-tank, anti-monster range fire, it isn't a viable army. You'll be playing on hard mode and you'll lose 9 out of 10 of your fights, just like if you tried to play it as a standalone Deathwatch codex. So as a standalone book, it doesn't really work. As a Deathwatch codex, it doesn't really work. Who is this really for? Well, it's really for people who want to get it and add an Inquisitor and some retinues to some of their Imperial forces. It'll work a bit that way. That's fine. It's the same thing that you could do in the Index. It's the same thing you can do with Knights. You can do it with this book. You can plug and play into other forces. It'll work that way. It'll also work at the combat patrol level or the 1000 points incursion level. It'll work at lower points. When you're doing skirmish-based games or lower point games, if you've got a deficiency in one area, so if you haven't got ranged anti-tank, or if you've got deficiency in another area, such as you can't really fight in close combat very well, it doesn't really matter as much in those lower point games. And in combat patrol, it doesn't really matter at all. But it could have been so much better. I was really looking forward to this book, looking forward to adding so much flavour to my pre-existing Imperial forces. But the restrictions are very restrictive. I was looking forward to having rules where Inquisitors could requisition units from other codexes and slap them in there. So you could have your Inquisitorial warband walking around all over the place, and then they could requisition in some Imperial Guard artillery and some tanks, and requisition in some sisters over here, and then you've got your Inquisitor and his warband, and then you've got some tanks, you've got some sisters. That would feel really good, feel really narrative, and you can't do that. If you've got a Chaos army, you can add 25% of Chaos Demons to any of your factions, and this, you can't do that in Imperial forces. Who's it for? Don't rant, don't rant. Maybe you know who's it for. If you do know who it is for, the codex, please write in the comment section below. I'm asking for a friend, but I can't see it. It seems like a missed opportunity, and that's the one thing I take away from the Imperial Agents Codex after reading it through. It feels like such a missed opportunity. As a standalone book, it doesn't work. As a Deathwatch book, it doesn't work. And as a vehicle to ally into other stuff, it does work a bit, but it could have been so much more. Which is unfortunate, because if it's not very popular, I can't see them doing this again. And I'd love to see a version of this again in 11th edition, then 12th edition. I'd love to see them building and working on this idea, because the base idea, it's a great idea. Just turn it into a book for us filthy casuals out there. Don't worry about all the tournament and all the balancing. I know you can only bring 5 Grey Knights along, because if they allowed you to bring 3 units of Grey Knights along and mix it, it might break the meta or something. Don't worry about the tournament stuff. If you're going to introduce books like Imperial Agents, if you're going to introduce a book for Eldar as well, and you should with the Ynnari, with the Harlequins, if you're going to introduce books which you can slot into other armies, then make them books for filthy casuals. Turn it into a playground, a collector's paradise. The collecting and hobbying potentials could be off the chain, but they're not. And that makes me a sad Warhammerer. I could go on, but let's close it out. Imperial Agents exists if you want to add bits to your existing Imperial army. If you're playing Deathwatch, you're playing Space Marines now. And if you want to play this as a standalone thing, you can try at Combat Patrol, but at 2,000 points, it's gonna end badly for you. Anyway, thank you for listening to my perfectly reasonable and not ranty review of the Imperial Agents Codex. Happy wargaming.